talk about the beautiful business of milk today. Yeah, yeah. I got milk. Let's talk about milk. Oh yeah, baby, let's talk about the beautiful business of milk today.
This episode of Got Milk is sponsored by Shunya Agritech, the folks revolutionizing cattle nutrition with hydroponic green fodder. Visit their website at shunya.live for more details or download the Shunya app from Play Store or App Store.
Welcome back, everyone. Today we're taking a deep dive into something that might seem pretty ordinary at first glance, the dairy industry.
Yeah, we all probably have some milk in our fridge right now.
Exactly. But what we're really going to explore is how this industry has a much bigger impact than you might think. We're talking employment, business growth, all through the lens of a really interesting case study, the Jaipur district of Rajasthan, India.
It's a fascinating example of how the dairy industry can really be an engine for change.
Okay, so before we jump into Jaipur specifically, can we zoom out for a second and just get a sense of the scale of the dairy industry, particular in India?
Absolutely. India is actually the world's leading milk producer.
Wow, I did not know that.
Yeah, and the growth has been incredible. Back in the early 50s, India was producing about 17 million tons of milk.
17 million.
Today, get this, they're producing a massive 155 million tons.
That's almost a tenfold increase. What drove that kind of explosive growth?
Well, there were several factors at play. A key driver was this national initiative called Operation Flood back in the 70s. It basically revolutionized India's dairy industry.
How so?
It connected millions of small-scale dairy farmers to consumers in big cities, creating this national milk grid.
Wow, that's a pretty ingenious idea.
Yeah, and it really transformed the landscape. Combined with the growing population and just an overall increase in demand for dairy products, it fueled this incredible expansion we're seeing today.
It's amazing how strategic planning and infrastructure can have such a ripple effect,
It really does. And when you look at India's contribution to the global milk market, it's staggering. I mean, just a few years ago, they were producing 18% of the world's milk output.
18%? That's a lot of milk. Okay, so now let's shift our focus to Jaipur, Rajasthan, which, as we mentioned, is a major milk-producing hub within India.
Right, and it's a great example of how this industry operates at a more regional level. Even back in 2012, the city of Jaipur was home to over 100,000 cattle.
So dairy farming was already a pretty big deal there.
Oh, absolutely. And if you look at organizations like the Jaipur Zila Dugdh Utpadak Sahakari Sangh Ltd.
Try saying that 5 times fast.
Right. It's a mouthful. But they're a leading milk cooperative in the district. And their numbers really highlight the scale of the industry. Back in 2016-2017, they were procuring, on average, a whopping 380,000 liters of milk every single day.
380,000 liters
Yeah.
daily. That's pretty impressive. But for those of us who aren't familiar with cooperatives, can you explain what they actually do? What's their role in all of this?
Sure. So cooperatives play a vital role in empowering dairy farmers. You can think of them as this collective force that helps, especially small-scale farmers, access larger markets and resources and really get the support they need.
So it's about strength in numbers.
Exactly. They pool resources, share knowledge, and can negotiate better prices for their milk, something that would be much harder to do individually.
Makes sense. It sounds like cooperatives are really key to understanding Jaipur's dairy success story. But let's shift gears for a moment. When we think about the dairy industry, it's easy to just focus on, well, the milk itself. But its impact goes way beyond that.
You're absolutely right. The dairy industry is like the heart of this complex web. It's connected to a whole network of businesses and services.
Give me some examples.
Everything from animal breeding and feed production to processing the milk, packaging it, distributing it. It all thrives when the dairy industry is strong.
So the success of dairy farming has this ripple effect, stimulating growth in all these other related industries.
Precisely. And that's where you start to see the real magic happen. This diversification actually creates a much more robust, more resilient local economy.
Because if one sector is having a tough time, the others can kind of help balance things out.
Exactly.
I like that. So it really makes you think about a glass of milk differently. Okay, but let's get down to brass tacks here. How does this interconnected web translate into real benefits for people, particularly when it comes to employment?
Right. Well, one of the key things we found in our research is this strong positive correlation between the growth of the dairy industry and an increase in job opportunities. And what's interesting is that it creates both direct and indirect employment.
Okay, break that down for me. What's the difference?
So direct employment is pretty straightforward. It's the jobs that are, directly involved in the dairy industry, the farmers themselves, the people processing the milk, those working in distribution, and so on.
Right, so those are the people on the front lines, getting that milk from the farm to our refrigerators. Makes sense. What about indirect employment then?
Think of it as the ripple effect. As the dairy industry grows, it fuels the growth of all those supporting industries. And that creates jobs in areas like feed production, veterinary services, transportation, packaging, all sorts of areas that are essential to keeping the dairy sector running.
So it's like this whole hidden workforce that we don't always think about, but that wouldn't exist without a strong dairy industry.
Exactly. And the research actually puts some numbers to this impact. One study found that for every 1,000 liters of milk produced daily, roughly 230 person days of employment are generated annually.
Okay, so let me do some quick math here. Remember that Jaipur cooperative we mentioned, procuring almost 400,000 liters a day,
Right?
that means their operation alone is creating a significant number of jobs, both direct and indirect.
The numbers definitely add up quickly when you consider the full picture.
This is really fascinating stuff, but we've talked a lot about jobs. What about businesses? How does this all impact businesses, especially those small and medium enterprises that are so vital to local economies?
Well, another big takeaway from our research is that the dairy industry's growth has a really positive effect on the growth of those SMEs. And it makes sense when you think about it. As the dairy industry grows and produces more milk, it increases the demand for dairy products.
Okay, I'm following you. So that increased demand for milk and cheese and yogurt, all that, then leads to a greater need for all those goods and services connected to dairy.
Exactly. And that creates opportunities for local businesses to step up and meet that demand.
So everyone wins.
Right. Think about it. Feed manufacturers, veterinarians, milk processors, suppliers, distributors, they all see a boost from a thriving dairy sector.
It's this awesome cycle of growth. The dairy industry is like this catalyst for all these smaller businesses to flourish. It creates such a dynamic and diverse local economy.
Precisely. But we can't just talk about economic growth. There's a really important social impact to consider as well, especially for women in Jaipur.
Oh, that's a great point. We can't forget about the social dimensions. So what does the research say about how the dairy industry impacts women?
Well, studies have shown that women actually make up about 60% of the labor force in the dairy farming sector in Rajasthan.
60%? Wow. What are the implications of that kind of participation?
Well, it means women are earning more income. They have more say in decisions within their households. It empowers them both economically and socially, which then have this ripple effect on their families and communities.
It's a good reminder that economic development isn't just about numbers. It's about real people and their lives. It's about creating opportunities for those who haven't always had them. And cooperatives seem to play a key role in that empowerment too, right?
Absolutely. Cooperatives are especially beneficial for women in this industry. They create this platform for women to connect, share knowledge, learn new skills, and build those social networks that are so valuable.
So it's more than just the economic benefits. It's about fostering a community and a sense of support.
Exactly.
This has been such an eye-opening look at the dairy industry's impact in Jaipur. It's clearly much more than just milk.
Right.
From creating jobs and empowering women to strengthening the entire local economy, it's really something to be impressed by.
It is. But before we get too carried away singing its praises, it's important to acknowledge that it's not all sunshine and roses. There are challenges alongside those opportunities.
You're right. What are some of the key challenges facing the dairy industry in Jaipur, especially for those small-scale farmers?
Well, things like low milk production, limited access to markets, and of course, always the concerns about animal health. These can be real obstacles for small-scale farmers trying to compete and thrive in the market.
Yeah, it's not always easy. So while we see all this amazing potential in the dairy industry, it's important to remember that it's not a walk in the park for everyone, especially those operating on a smaller scale.
Absolutely. And that's something we'll definitely dive into more deeply after a short break. When we come back, we'll explore those challenges, potential solutions, and also discuss how the Jaipur model might offer valuable lessons for other regions looking to harness the power of the dairy industry.
So we've been digging into the dairy industry's impact in Jaipur, and it's clear that it's doing some amazing things, from boosting employment to really empowering women. But now I'm curious about whether this model, this Jaipur model, could actually be replicated elsewhere? Could other regions learn from their success story?
Oh, absolutely. The Jaipur model has a lot to offer, especially for regions with similar challenges and economic structures.
So what are the key takeaways here? What makes this model so effective that other places could learn from?
Well, one of the big things is the focus on cooperatives. We've talked about how they really give farmers a voice, especially the smaller ones, and help level the playing field. That's a model that could be super valuable in places where small-scale farmers are struggling to compete on their own.
Right. It's about creating a system that benefits everybody, not just a select few.
Exactly. It's a much more equitable approach. And another big takeaway is that ripple effect we discussed earlier, recognizing that the dairy industry isn't just about producing milk, it's about supporting all those interconnected businesses and services that make up the whole ecosystem.
Yeah, it's not just about the milk itself. It's about everything surrounding it.
Precisely. And that interconnectedness is what makes an economy more resilient. By helping those related industries grow, regions can create a kind of buffer against, economic shocks and market fluctuations.
So it's a more holistic approach.
Right?
Strengthening the whole value chain instead of focusing on just one product. But I imagine there are challenges, right? Like every region is different. How do we make sure this model actually translates effectively to other places?
You're right. Adaptation is key. You can't just take a cookie-cutter approach. The first step is really understanding the local context, the specific needs, the resources, the challenges unique to each region.
So we need to tailor the solutions to fit each situation.
Exactly. For example, some areas might be better suited to larger-scale dairy farming, while others might do better with smaller, family-run operations. Some might already have cooperative structures in place, while others would need to build them from scratch.
It's about being flexible and adaptable, finding the right fit. And this isn't a quick fix, right? It takes time to build a thriving dairy industry.
Oh, absolutely. It requires a real commitment from everybody involved, governments, communities, the industry itself. It needs investment and a long-term vision, but the potential rewards are definitely worth it.
Speaking of challenges, we touched on some of those faced by small-scale farmers in Jaipur earlier. Things like low milk production. Can you remind us what those obstacles are and what might be done to help?
Sure. Well, one of the biggest challenges for these farmers is low milk production. They often struggle to access, quality breeding stock, good health care for their animals, and nutritious feed. And that all affects the amount of milk they can produce, the quality of the milk, and ultimately their income and their ability to compete.
It's like a cycle that's hard to break out of. Low production means lower income, which makes it harder to invest in improvements that could help them produce more. So how do we address that?
Well, there are some promising solutions. One is access to training, giving farmers the knowledge and skills they need to improve their practices.
Education can be so powerful.
It really can. And another solution is making sure they have access to better breeding stock, maybe through artificial insemination programs. That can really improve the genetic potential of their herds.
Makes sense. And what about animal health? I imagine that's a constant concern for dairy farmers, especially the smaller ones.
Oh, for sure. Affordable veterinary care is essential. Mobile clinics, the ones that can travel to remote areas, can be a game changer for farmers who can't easily transport their animals.
It's about meeting people where they are, literally. I love that idea. But even if they could produce more milk, getting it to market is another hurdle, right?
Absolutely. Limited access to markets is a big one. A lot of small-scale farmers are pretty isolated. They're far from processing facilities and the urban centers where the demand for dairy is.
So they're stuck with this valuable product, but can't easily get it to the people who want it. That's got to be frustrating. What can be done about that?
Well, investing in infrastructure is key. Better roads, more efficient transportation networks, those make a big difference. It makes transporting that milk more affordable and just easier overall.
Infrastructure is so crucial. It really connects everything. But those kinds of projects take time and money. Are there solutions that can help more immediately?
Yeah, for sure. Setting up collection centers, especially in those rural areas, can help a lot. It gives farmers a reliable place to sell their milk, and it makes it easier for larger buyers or processors to collect bigger quantities efficiently.
So everyone benefits. Great. What other solutions are out there? What's on the horizon that could help support the dairy industry's growth?
Well, technology is becoming a bigger player. Mobile phone apps, for instance, are being used to connect farmers with vets, give them real-time market information, even handle payments for their milk.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
It really shows how technology can level the playing field, even in the most remote places. Sounds like there's a lot of hope for the future of the dairy industry.
There really is. I think by learning from models like Jaipur's, being willing to adapt and embracing these new innovations, we can make a real difference.
It's inspiring to see how something as simple as a glass of milk can represent so much.
Yeah.
Economic opportunity, social progress, even a more sustainable future.
It really is remarkable, and it all starts with recognizing the bigger picture, the whole interconnected web.
Absolutely. Well, this has been a fascinating deep dive into the world of dairy. Thank you for sharing your expertise with us today. We'll be right back after a quick break to discuss the challenges and potential solutions in more detail. It's been really eye-opening to explore the impact of the dairy industry, not just in terms of economic growth, but also the social effects, especially for women. As we wrap up this deep dive, what would you say is the biggest takeaway from the Jaipur model?
I think the key is that a thriving dairy industry can really drive positive change, but it needs a holistic approach. It can't just be about producing more milk. It's got to be about creating a sustainable ecosystem that works for everybody.
Makes sense. We've seen how interconnected everything is. The farmers, the cooperatives, the businesses, even us, the consumers. Everyone plays a part.
Absolutely. And it really shows how important long-term vision and collaboration are. Governments, communities, and the industry, everyone needs to work together to tackle those challenges, invest in infrastructure, and really create policies that support sustainable growth.
We talked about some of those challenges earlier. Low milk production, access to markets, animal health. What can be done to overcome those and ensure a good future for the dairy industry, especially in places like Jaipur?
Well, investing in training is a big one. Giving farmers the knowledge and skills to use modern practices, improve their yields, that can make a huge difference.
Empowering them with the right information.
Exactly. And then there's the issue of resources, making sure farmers have access to good breeding stock, artificial insemination, nutritious feed that can really boost production. And when it comes to animal health, expanding vet care, things like mobile clinics, those are game changers, especially in more remote areas.
It's about giving them the support they need to succeed. We also talked about market access, which can be a real struggle for farmers who are further away from those urban centers. What solutions are out there for that?
Infrastructure is key. Investing in better roads and transportation networks, that makes a big difference. Makes it easier and cheaper to get that milk to where it needs to go.
Connecting those dots. But those big infrastructure projects take time, right? What about more immediate solutions?
Right. Setting up those collection centers in rural areas can really help. It gives farmers a reliable place to sell their milk, and it makes it easier for bigger buyers and processors to get those larger quantities. And then there's technology.
I was just going to ask about that. Technology seems to be changing everything these days. How is it being used to help the dairy industry?
Well, there are mobile apps that are connecting farmers with vets, giving them up-to-date market info, even handling payments. It's pretty amazing how technology can empower those farmers no matter where they are.
Leveling that playing field. It sounds like there's a lot to be optimistic about when it comes to the future of dairy, not just in Jaipur, but globally.
I think so. By learning from successful models like we've seen in Jaipur, adapting those to different situations, and really being open to new ideas and technologies, we can achieve a lot. It's about making sure that glass of milk represents more than just a drink. It's about economic opportunity, social progress, a sustainable future.
It's been a fascinating journey exploring the world of dairy. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise and insights. And to all our listeners, we hope this deep dive has given you a new appreciation for the journey of that milk from farm to table. Until next time, stay curious.
I got milk. Let's